let's get started. My name's Randy Estes. I'm the president / Western Regional Manager of Valve Accessories and Controls. We want to thank you guys for tuning in today. I have Scott and Carly in our office in Birmingham, and they're going to be showing some products that we deem as specials. And we've got Bob Goodwin, our Eastern Regional Manager, who has a cool car behind him, who will chime in as I will during this presentation. Guys, we highly recommend, and we're going to try to get some interaction as best as possible. There's two ways you can interact. One is unmute your mic and then say something. The other way is to use the chat feature in Zoom, and feel free to ask questions, get clarifications, whatnot. The second thing is, as you've noticed, we're doing this once a month now, and we're running out of ideas. So if you guys have something specific that you'd like for us to do, or you have a great idea, please let Bob or myself or anybody at Valve Accessories know. We've sent out a survey even. And we're still looking. So please let us know if you have any good ideas. So today we're going to be talking about specials, and what we mean by specials are specials that typically other positioner manufacturers don't do. Makes Valve Accessories very unique. And what could it possibly bring for you guys is solve a problem for a customer, an end user, that you might not have known that we had. In fact, Bob, when we were going through our dry run yesterday, Bob goes, I didn't know we had that. So even for us, we kind of go through our specials and make sure that we're all on top of it. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott in our office, and he is going to tell us all about specials.
All right, everybody. Today, like I'm kind of reiterating a little bit of what Randy said, is we're going to go over some of the special units. The reason we call them special units because they're a little bit out of our normal units standards. They have special applications, special areas they go in, special, gas supplies, supply pressure, and stuff like that. And that's where we go into these special units. And to go over something Randy said, we're looking for some topics. If we've already gone over something, you've watched the video, and there's some topic that you want in a little more detail or something, just let us know. Either chat, email, unmute your mic, and ask us later today. We'll try to get something out to you guys for this stuff. But today we're going to focus on our special units. And the first special units we're going to talk about is we're going to be talking about our nickel units. Our nickel units are this is the V200 nickel unit. The nickel unit is just a nickel coated standard V200. We can get these as pneumatic or electro-pneumatic. They function exactly the same as a standard unit, but it goes into cases in applications where you have you need more corrosion resistance than the standard paint on the standard V200. The V100 is offered as a nickel as well. It is available as a pneumatic or electro-pneumatic. These are used a lot in food and beverage because it goes well, pairs well like a stainless actuator, like over here we have to the side. Is real good for wash down. It's real clean looking. But it's really good. It's when you have application where you need a little more corrosion protection than a standard V200 unit, you can go with a nickel plate. But that's as far as.
It's a good alternative to stainless steel, and occasionally you'll come across somebody who goes, oh, I just don't trust paint. Paint will peel or cause a contamination problem. Both the nickel and the Tufram, which Scott will talk about, are good solutions in those cases where somebody's got a concern about paint.
Right. But like I said, the nickel unit, it's used a lot in food and beverage is where we see it probably the most. It's a really good unit. Like I said, fit, form, and function is exactly like a standard V200. The only difference, it has a different coating. Once you get away from the nickel, we also have a unit that's a Tufram. Tufram coating, it's a kind of a two-step process where they hard anodize it, and it's more of an impregnation of the metal. It's not just a coating. They actually do some things that it adheres to the metal and kind of bonds with the metal more than just lays on top of the metal. But these are Tufram coated. It's a general magnet plate. It has the process for the Tufram, but Tufram works really good, and we have a bunch of these in offshore applications. V100 and V200 are available, both electro-pneumatic and pneumatic. But they are yet another way to have another added step of protection, and when you need corrosion resistance in especially corrosive environments.
Are these only coated on the outside?
No, the inside, the unit's coated through and through. Inside and outside are coated. So, and then the inside has the same amount of coating. If to pull the cover off of one, which I don't have those loose, but the inside's coated just as well as the outside. I think one of these should be loose.
That's on the nickel and the Tufram, inside and outside?
Right, nickel and Tufram are both coated inside and out.
Correct.
Once you get away from the nickels and Tuframs, those are just standard V200 units with a special coating. They have pretty much all the same options. The feedback fit in them fine. There's no the feedback goes in. They have the different pilot options. All that is just the same as a standard V200. You just have the extra corrosion protection. Once we get away from the nickel and the Tufram, we have a couple other units that we also have. I don't have a unit out, but we have a low temp unit. It looks just like the standard V200, but the difference with the V200 will be it'll have a red plug. The stainless has stainless on the gauge plugs as opposed to the black plastic plugs. And what the low temp is good for, it's good for negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit to 135 degrees or 185 degrees. So it's a lower temperature. The standard unit is good down to negative 40, or the low temp's good down to negative 58. But as far as fit, form, and function, that's a pneumatic only. And that's mainly because the IDP and some other stuff starts acting a little strange. And we get away with that by changing some of the components. Basically the elastomers in the low temp unit goes to silicone and has a different signal diaphragm.
Scott, Gita is asking, what applications require a nickel coating?
Applications that require it, a lot of times it gets used in caustic washdown. I don't know that there is a specific requirement for it. It's generally kind of a case by case, and if where the conditions of the area it's going in, if it needs a higher corrosion protection than just standard polyester paint.
And I would say majority of our nickels that we sell go to a food and beverage industry,
Right.
And pharmaceutical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where they need it to be a clean look.
Yeah, it looks like stainless. It's not. It's high phosphorus nickel coating, so it's very similar in appearance to stainless, and it's a good alternative to stainless, where it's not as costly as stainless would be, but it is a step above the standard coating.
It's really good in places where they have paint failure problems as well. So I've sold them into stock prep in paper mills and that sort of thing, where they've got a lot of bleach and that sort of stuff around. You may find that a plant might use regular V200s for most applications, but they've got some problem area where either a nickel or a Tufram is a good solution to help them with a difficult area of the facility.
Can these work in a marine environment?
In marine environment, yes, we have several of the Tufram. We've got just a couple. Bob, you can probably speak to this a little better. That we do have some of these in offshore applications. So,
yeah, we have some on offshore, like oil rigs, and a few on ships.
Say in marine, it works. It holds up really well to salt spray. We actually have some tests that show, I can't remember the time frame, but that it's been submerged in a brine solution and showing no effect. So
we sell a lot of the Tufram units to chloralkali facilities such as Oxy, Dow, Olin. So there's plenty out there in those really harsh environments.
So we've spoken a little bit about the standard unit with the low temp. Basically, it's a standard V200. It's the blue and white package, same coating, just changes the elastomer, gives us a little bit lower temp. When we look at this, we have nickel and Tufram options beyond the standard units that go a little bit more into different areas. One thing we showed, another unit we have is what we call our EHT. It's a V200. It's for extra high temp. This is good for 325 degrees Fahrenheit, continuous service, but it is available pneumatic only. So if you need this to be a 4 to 20 input, what you'll have to do is remote mount an IDP somewhere else, sending a 3 to 15 signal to this unit. But you'll notice the distinguishing characteristics of this over the plain nickel unit is that it does not have an indicator cover. This is a solid piece of metal across the cover. There's no indicator on the outside. So there's no scale because you wouldn't be able to see the arrow or it would melt off anyhow. But it also has the red 0 and span plug, as well as stainless steel fittings in the gauge plugs. But this is the extra high temp pneumatic unit, and it is good for 325 degrees max.
And both the low temp, the high temp, well, actually pretty much everything we're talking about here today is something that's specifiable as a problem-solving solution in a facility.
Right. Right. Most of anything here is something that's going to be there's not a broad use for it. It's real specific, but like Bob said, you can specify it in a particular application for the specs of that unit. So it'll meet a certain area classification, or due to the environment, or you'll see the supply is also an option. So that is one of the options. So this is the high temp unit is a nickel coated unit, which has the elastomers changed to silicone and the other changes I talked about without the cover and without the sticker on front. Another unit we have is a Tufram plug unit. This is just the same as the other. It is available as a P or an E, but with the addition of, instead of having the push-in type cover, there's actually a screw-in plug at the bottom. So it has an added level of moisture ingress or protection from the environment. Oftentimes in a bunch of applications where you have a bunch of wash down or real high pressure hose directed, we have seen where these hoses can get blown out or cut away when you direct high pressure air or steam or water directly into that port. So the V200 plug unit gets away from that because that is a screw-in plug.
Yeah, that's a V200 only option, and we don't have that on the 100.
Right. Getting kind of out of the special coatings, more into something we've touched on a little bit in the past, and something we're going to kind of come back to because it's not standard units that you see every day. Is another unit we have is a 0 to 10, and this is talking about our supply volt. I mean our signal, our incoming signal. This is a 0 to 10 V100. And that is done by an external IDP mounted to the outside. So what that is taking a 0 to 10 volt signal versus the standard 4 to 20 or the standard 3 to 15. This is a lot in commercial type applications, and HVACs is where you see it a lot. And this 0 to 10 is available in the V100 or the V200. But it is a 4-wire type, so it does have 6 to 30 volt supply, then the 0 to 10 volt signal on top of that.
And you typically see these on large HVAC systems, typically in hospitals. Outside of that, I've never seen them anywhere other than on top of hospitals where there's damper drives and stuff for HVAC systems.
Yeah, you'll see them in older metro areas and high-rise buildings and that sort of thing. And I've seen them on a few college campuses and HVAC, but it's really a commercial HVAC type solution. Now, before you move on, Scott, does anybody have any questions, additional questions or application questions about anything that's been talked about so far? If you don't, think about it, and we can cover it towards the end as well. But please feel free to jump in if you've got something that. Yeah,
definitely jump in, chime in if you got questions. If you have an application that you don't think a standard V100 or V200 would fit, ask questions. We'll see what we can do. I'm sure we've got something we can do to.
And before we jump on it too, I want to point out to Bill Bassett, this is not Smirnoff Ice, it's just water, okay? So I just want to clear that up.
Wait, where's my bottle of whiskey?
All right. Another type of kind of a special unit we also offer is a gas approved unit. This unit is very similar to our EX, very similar to the 0 to 10, that this is available in a V100 or a V200. And it is done, what we do is we take an IDP, we have a plate that mounts the IDP to the positioner. Now this unit can actually take natural gas, sweet gas, as a supply, and it can control the valve, move the actuator by using natural gas as the supply medium. You don't need nitrogen or compressed air or anything. It can actually use line pressure, reduce down, And with this unit, you can use that as a supply. This set gets used a lot when remote locations.
Would you say?
The fire at that they're ordered on the software.
Scott, on
Yeah.
the natural gas unit, can you show them the exhaust port on both the positioner and the I2P that would need to be vented?
So when you're using this unit with natural gas, you have your standard 4 ports. This would have a plug in it with the I2P, but you'd have your supply C plus C minus. You will also have to remove the out plug, and you tube this 1/4-inch port away. And on the bottom of the I2P, there's an 1/8-inch port that you tube that away to atmosphere. So if it's outside in the open, if it's just in a pipeline in the middle of the field, probably not a problem. But if it's inside of a building, what you'll have to do is tube those 2 items away, because the purge of the unit with the pilot valve with its constant purge, you want to route that to atmosphere, and also with the I2P, it has a very slight purge that you'll want to route that to atmosphere as well, so it doesn't build up in an enclosed space.
And anybody installing a positioner running on natural gas should understand that
Yes.
and be able to install it
Yeah,
according to best practices.
that's a pretty common thing. All right, to step away from positioners for a second, one thing that we've touched on briefly in one of the other previous webinars, is we do offer a standalone limit switch. It is a R300. It's available with limit switches, mechanical switches. We have reed switches. We have 4 to 20 feedback in different variations of those and different combinations of those. But it mounts just like a V100 or V200 does. It uses the same mounting kit. So this is an option when sometimes you don't have a standard mount like knife gates and some other odd kind of circumstances where the mounting kit is the issue. Where we know if we can mount a positioner, we can mount an R300 on it. And it's generally linear stuff that really that comes into play. But that's another option, but that's the R300 freestand and limit switch.
Really good way to take advantage of all of the 300 plus linkage kits that we have. And sometimes somebody will want to put switches on a Fisher valve. They've already got a Fisher positioner, but that's an answer to putting switches on that's easier than most.
Right. Most of everything we've talked about today revolves around analog products. Some of the digital, we also have some special units on digital. Don't have a lot to show you here. Carly's going to here in a second share some slides that kind of show you what I'm talking about. But one thing we do have to want to show you is this is the fail freeze unit. This unit is a D400 fail freeze. What it allows you to do is put the unit on an actuator, and when it loses control signal, that positioner will lock in place. It will not.
Yes, we do have
It will not go no matter what the air supply issue is. What it does is whenever it loses signal, what it does is blocks all ports, or it freezes the control signal so it stays in place. This particular unit has some accessories added, which we've done a previous webinar on, but it has a pneumatic lockup that's kind of the same thing, same process, same concept, that when it loses its supply pressure, that pneumatically it closes and locks all ports so no air can get in or out of the actuator or in or out of the positioner, so that it stays in place until the pressure comes back up in the system to where it's satisfied and it'll open back up. Another unit, some things we've talked about a little bit, especially with the extra high temp, where we say this is pneumatic only, and have a remote mounted I2P. A lot of times we talk about that here, is that is the original remote mount positioner, that you put the pneumatic positioner on the valve assembly and you remote mount your I2P somewhere else. We also offer a digital unit that is remote mount. We have the 500 and 400 in remote mount. And what that allows us to do is put basically a potentiometer onto the actuator itself and remotely mount the control head somewhere else. Like I said, that's available on the D400 and the 500. Another option we have.
Hey, Scott,
Yes.
Bill Bassett is asking, how long will it hold the pressure for? And I'm assuming he means the D400 fail freeze. And that time is around 24 hours. That's
Right.
There is a little bit of drift once we get past that point. So for it to stay right where it is without, minimal drift, it's about 24 hours.
Yeah. And the 24 hours is kind of the standard. In our reality, we've seen it last much longer. And a lot of that also has to do with the way, make sure it relies a lot on line connections. That if you have an airline that leaks or something, that kind of plays into it as well. But as long as you have all airtight fittings, you have no leaks, it's going to last at least 24 hours. Like Randy said, it may start to degrade a little bit after that. But as far as that's on the fail freeze, on the loss of control signal, on loss of air pressure with the pneumatic lockup, it's going to stay locked in place until the system supply pressure for the supply side comes back up above the set pressure.
But again, if there's a tubing leak after the lockup valve or after the positioner, you can't guarantee it because that becomes a weak point.
Correct. Another option that we do have, again, is something we don't see very often, but when we look at digital products and we really need to get into high corrosion environments for those, we do have the D500 is available in the stainless housing. It's also, so can you show the slide? So the stainless, Carla's going to share a couple slides here. It's going to show you some pictures of the D500 and some of the remote mount units, just so you get an idea of what they look like. But we do have the stainless steel remote mount D500 available as well. So the first picture there, that's a standard D400 with remote mount sensor. So the black part is the sensor that would mount to your valve package, and the white lid would mount, away from it and out of the bad environment. This is the next slide there. That's going to be a stainless steel remote mount D500. As you notice, it's the same unit on both sides. So the remote mount sensor head is the one on the bottom.
Scott?
Yes.
It looks like the video for screen sharing has frozen. So all I see is a background of the Windows Explorer on my screen.
Yeah.
Not sure if that's the case for everybody.
Okay. So we're going to try and start again. Does that change it?
There you go. That's the stainless D500 remote.
That's the stainless D500 remote mount. If it was a stainless steel D500, it would just be the top of those two units. Like I said, the bottom unit is the sensor head that mounts directly on the valves and actuator package, and the top is your control head. And then there's just a picture of just the D500 stainless unit. So if you go back to the brochure, just share that if you don't mind. So
And typically the cable length is 10 meters, so roughly 30 feet
right.
is how far you can mount the head unit from the sensor.
So what Carly's sharing now on the screen is just the remote sensor options. It's just so if you get a standard D500 remote sensor, the remote sensor is actually a D400 housing with just the potentiometer in it, and then the standard D500 control head.
Yeah, it's doing the same thing again.
Okay. All right. Well, Carly, do you have questions?
Can I show them the Tufram thing, or do you want to just?
Well, before Carly picks everybody's brain,
Yeah.
does anybody else have a specific application where they think a specialty unit might solve a problem, or an application where they think we might be able to come up with a solution? Most of these special units came out of a customer requirement. So things like the V200 plug unit came out of a customer with a washdown problem. So feel free to chime in and say, listen, hey, I've got, this customer has this problem and how can we solve it? Or reach out to us afterwards if you're not comfortable doing it now.
All right. I think Carly has a question or two to ask here and see what everybody has to say.
Okay. Question number 1. Is the extra high temp option available for electropneumatic positioners? David Cattleman, he's quick. He says no, that is correct.
That is correct. Extra high temp and the low temp version are both pneumatic only. And those units, you also would not be able to mount feedback in those units as well, for the same basic reasons as the the 325 degrees on the extra high temp kind of exceeds the limits of the electronic components inside.
Okay. Question number 2 is, what are some of the benefits of having a plug unit? Scott kind of went over when he was talking about the food and beverage industry. That's a good example. So why would you need a plug for that? Okay. Bill says protection from high pressure washdowns.
That is correct.
Yeah. Austin's answer, it won't get water in it, is
Same thing.
same basic idea. Yeah.
Equally.
Yes. Bill gets a gold star. It was actually came up with the idea at Golden, Colorado at the Coors Brewery because they were having issues with a digital positioner and it was getting lots of washdown in the area.
All right. Well,
The Tufram plug is for who?
That's for a skid maker. They make soda bottle filling equipment for Coca-Cola and PepsiCo.
Yeah, okay.
And so that's a high washdown environment too. And they actually originally were buying V100s, but they had so much trouble with the plugs getting cut off by pressure washing that they insisted on Tufram, but they like the plug too. So that's how the Tufram plug unit came about. Because your original solution for cores was just standard paint, right, Randy?
Correct. Yeah, it was just standard.
Yeah, again, so guys, a lot of what you see, most of these units on here are not going to be the positioner you sell every time, all the time, or what you're going to look at supplying anytime. These are these fit little niches and to fix issues that a customer's having. If they're seeing a lot of paint problems, or if they're, like I said, somebody's pressure washing and cutting these plugs off, or knocking the plugs out, filling them full of water, then we can look at a plug. If they're seeing paint issues, we can look at a nickel or a Tufram unit. If the temperature exceeds the 185 degrees, we can go to the high temp. Low temp stuff we don't see a lot of, but it is an option that we have to get down to negative 58 degrees. So it's just, like I said, things that if you just think in terms of standard 4 to 20 input, just regular atmosphere, these are not the units you'd want to use. Go to the standard V100 or V200. These, like I said, help solve some problems and get into some places where you have issues.
And they're really good solutions when a customer is already using the product, but they come to you with a problem. Mm-hmm. And if we haven't covered a solution to whatever problems you may hear about, get a hold of us. We're not afraid to look at something like this and try and come up with a solution to whatever your customer's issue is. It's one of the benefits of us being a small independent manufacturer.
Right. And I mean, that's exactly how the original plug unit came about. Was they had a request, they liked the V200, but they wanted a little bit extra. So we went to the engineers and discussed it and came up with a solution. Bill Bastet is asking another question. He's asking, where would we see the fail freeze units in a plant environment? Is that primarily damper drives? Yes. Yes. I would say it's 98% damper drives.
Although we're seeing it more in industrial now, where they're having to, safety shutdown valves and, still requirements where they have to have certain valves perform a certain way under failure conditions. So we've got a bunch of D500 fail freezes installed in a hydrogen cyanide plant because they can't tolerate the valves moving on loss of signal. If they have the power blink just for a minute, they can't have it move. SIL 2, George, the highest SIL level available is SIL 2, and you have to order the unit with the SIL certificate. The SIL certificate and the unit are serialized together.
And that is on the
available.
That is digital products only.
Digital only. Yeah.
V400 and D500. Good question.
And the D500 is available SIL 2 with an emergency shutdown module as well.
Right.
With a SIL rated ESD module. as well as the D500 does partial stroke standard, and you can have it with the Silcert as well. Keep waiting. I'll think of something else to say in a second.
Well, guys, I just thought of one. The standard V200 feedback does just over 180 degrees, correct? We do have an option for 270 degrees feedback.
The standard is 90 degrees.
Standard is 90.
To get to 180, we go to the 270 feedback,
Okay,
and that allows the 180 or the 270.
there you go. But that's something out of the ordinary.
Correct. So if you get a V200 standard with a C1 cam, it can handle 180 degrees. But if you get a standard feedback, it will not do it. You have to order 270 degree feedback to get to 180 degrees on the feedback side.
And George, just so you know about the partial stroke, every D500 has partial stroke built in as standard. It's not an option. Everyone's got it.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Scott, is there any other specials we can think of?
Nothing offhand. I've pulled pretty much everything. I mean, something you kind of talked about a while ago, where how we determine. I mean, we show the Tufram plug we show the Tufram plug unit, but that was kind of one of those applications where somebody came to us and we kind of melted two of the special units together and came up with a Tufram plug, where originally we have the Tufram unit standard and the plug unit, and we kind of put the two together. So that's one of those kind of problem solving applications we came up with. So that's the kind of stuff we're not afraid to at least entertain or see if it's even possible.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's the I'll say that's everything I have on my list.
It's a pretty extensive list. It's, how many other positioner companies can meet all of these requirements? I can't think of any.
Zero. Oh, one, sorry, us.
I said other.
I'm an Aggie man. My Aggie math's a little off.
Well, it's the ring.
Hey guys, well, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, I just want to reiterate everything and echo again what Scott and Bob have said. If a situation comes up that, get us involved to help you out, pick the best. Also, feel free to contact us if you have ideas for the webinar. We'd love to hear about it. So thank you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.